What's going on, y'all, and welcome back to another Epic 7 video. I'm going to do something I haven't done on this channel, I think, just yet, but I'm going to revisit and re-review Abyssal Yufine. Last week's review, I kind of mentioned, she is a little bit more niche. A lot of times, if you guys aren't super serious about PvP, you might be better off saving your mystics for a different unit. Now, I think it still holds true that she is a PvP-only unit, but I did not predict how strong she would end up being in 1 week's time already and how fast the meta has shifted to accommodate her. If you pre-ban, make sure you pick some things on your side. I didn't think she would be a unit that you can pick into every match, not just against aggro and cleave where she would shine, against units that need combat readiness, things like that. She's shaping up, guys, to be a unit that you can pick in almost every game, and she ends up being extremely strong if you do a few, if there's some certain factors that go into play. So we're going to go over all of that, what changed between last week and this, and I just want to kind of apologize. I do always make the disclaimer, right, that it's impossible for anyone to give you 100% on if you should pull or not based on just the first impression, but as content creators, it is kind of our job to deliver the news as fast as possible. Otherwise, you're kind of just left behind since everyone else is reporting as well. But I did see most people kind of, say Abyssal Yufine was just okay, and I think that sentiment and mentality is shifting, and we have numbers to back it up. And I'm going to show you some gameplay footage on top of all that. So thank you so much for tuning in. Good luck on your summons. And let me talk about why Abyssal Yufine is really worth summoning this week especially. All right, jumping in game. This week's rotation, guys, is much, much better than last week's if you did hold off. So there's some silver lining in case you guys were waiting to see how she would shape up. Abyssal Yufine this week has on her banner things like Fire Lilius, who is an amazing unit on her own, but of course this can also be dupes for Conqueror Lilius as well as a Midnight Gala Lilius on top of that. So just a strong unit. All three counterparts are very strong, and on top of that, extra dupes for any of them that you already own. Additionally, there is units like Fire Stern on here, which I actually saw a lot of people not have in their account. And so if you want to pick her up for how strong she is in Rift, she's very strong in the Rift mode right now. One of the best debuffers, one of the just best units, fire units to use in Rift at the moment. You can probably get her here, as if you do spend a lot of mystics, we all know you get so many 4 stars in this bunch. And then last but not least, there is the very coveted Togahill's Ancient Book, which almost everybody will tell you when you start Epic 7, try to get as many of these as possible, as it's just one of the most stacked artifacts you can have, especially for mages. So this is just a very nice week to pull for Abyssal Yufine if you guys do decide to and you were holding off. But without further ado, let's talk about why Abyssal Yufine is so strong, just what happened in 1 week's time. All right, guys, here's my stat sheet and equipment for my Abyssal Yufine. And if you notice, it's almost exactly the same, if not exactly the same as the first impression, the first honest review I did last week, with the exception of the artifact Holy Sacrifice, which I'm going to cover here. Some people put me onto this tech, and I am absolutely a fan. I think this is the best in slot. Is it mandatory if you don't have it? Maybe not. I think Elber still has some promise, but we'll cover artifacts here in just a minute. My set is going to be still lifesteal and immunity. I still really enjoy lifesteal, but I've heard some people really like speed set. Anything that gives you extra stats, guys, is always something always worth considering. Lifesteal and counter, I always tell you guys, they have effects, but they don't give you the raw stats that you have on your sheet. And so if you do opt for speed or destruction, I think that's okay too. I did get some comments as well talking about the other 2-piece set here. I'm rocking immunity. I've been a fan of it. And my mentality is that if I can get my stats looking nice enough where I'm happy with them and have an immunity on top of that, I really, really like rocking this set, as a lot of times you'll win matches that you otherwise should have lost. Is crit set just fine? Yes. And if your stats or your gear isn't quite up to par and you need that extra boost from crit chance set, for example, definitely go for that. Immunity is not mandatory. But I want to show you guys something. I had some comments saying, Car, immunity set not really as good as you think for X, Y, and Z reasons, and I agree. Immunity set, as more and more units come out that are power corrupt, that can remove the set, that ignore effect resist, that can just strip, reduce buff durations by 1 turn, whatever it is, immunity set gets weaker and weaker by the day. The fact of the matter is, though, for PvP and real-time arena, if you can get your stats up to par without the bonus of sets like crit set, rocking that immunity will just let you win sets let you win games like I mentioned that otherwise a person not on immunity set would have lost. So even though the reasons for using immunity might be decreasing, I still think it's important, and it shows here in the Legend Insight season that the lifesteal immunity set is the highest win rate. Now I know this could be, it's still very early on, but it is showing you that even the top-rated PvP players opt for immunity when possible. And if you can see rank 2, we do have a lifesteal crit set. So either one works. I don't see a speed set on here. I see destruction, but I have heard from some people that I know are good players say speed set is good as well. So you see destruction immunity here, you see lifesteal defense set here, and then second place is lifesteal crit set. So really just opt for what you have, but I am a big fan of the lifesteal and a fan of the immunity on top of it too. So let me quickly cover the stats again, but everything stays the same, guys. She is a bruiser unit. We want to have every stat here on her sheet with the exception of effectiveness and effect resist, and try to have an overall balance. The most important, or the only mandatory thing, is to stay above 2000 defense because of the trauma unique effect. We want to make sure we get that bonus stat. So make sure the trauma, we want to make sure we're at least 2k defense minimum, and you guys can get additional help there through the imprint concentration, don't forget. Other than that, just have a good balance of attack and crit damage. Attack especially because, you know, trauma will give that bonus. And if you guys are capable of it, some people even push up to 2k attack. But overall, just make sure you have a good balance. Don't sweat it too much. Use what you have available. And I think Abyssal Yufine, even though she is stat hungry, a lot of you guys can build her up and use her effectively. So let's talk shop. Why did I make this video today? Why am I talking about Abyssal Yufine? Why is her win rate skyrocketing? Why is the community, and especially high-ranked players, saying she's actually busted? Well, there's a few factors, okay? Abyssal Yufine, in my opinion, last week was a strong PvP unit if you picture in the right scenario, mainly being cleave and aggro, especially units that want to have that combat readiness, where her Politis-like effect on her passive is going to cut that in half. The truth of the matter is, though, guys, I've seen a lot of players, and I've tried it myself, and it works. You can pick Abyssal Yufine in almost every single match you play if you follow a few certain rules, which I'm going to go over here right now. But that's why Abyssal Yufine, I think, is not just a niche unit, at least for this current meta. Cleave and aggro are actually, I think, on the downswing, very hard to play, and Abyssal Yufine, a lot of players are saying as well, is the final nail in the coffin, where bruisers, turn 2 players are looking so strong right now, maybe the dominant playstyle, which is kind of rare, and aggro and cleave are going to be kind of, yeah, like I mentioned, having a tough time, especially against her on top of it too. So what do we need to follow if we want to pick Abyssal Yufine outside of just those niche scenarios with combat readiness, you know, fast aggressive units? If we want to just pick her in every game against opponents that are also, you know, standard, maybe even tanky, is we're going to want a few things here. Number one being, of course, you want to make sure she has some protection in the form of, if you can, ROL. I think ROL right now, guys, is just so strong and should be something that should be contested in your first pick spot. She's just the premier knight at the moment, bar none. Insane mitigation. The stun is just unbelievable. If you can get her on your side, your win rate is just going to skyrocket, Abyssal Yufine or not. Beyond that, too, one of Abyssal Yufine's hardest counters is Auden, who we're going to want to try to get on our side. It's going to scare other players from picking Abyssal Yufine potentially as well. And she's just a very strong unit this meta. She's been a very strong unit in general for the past year or so. But just really, really good in combination with Abyssal Yufine, mostly because she's a stick unit that your opponent is going to have to consider how to deal with. She has great utility, strong nuke damage, and, you know, as long as our RNG isn't terrible, just very, very good in general. If we can get ROL, Auden, ROL can be, you know, another knight as well. Doesn't have to be ROL, but if we can get kind of like some of these pieces and then pick Abyssal Yufine in our 3rd or 4th slot, this is where I think a lot of, especially legend players, have been finding so much success picking Abyssal Yufine into every game. As long as we can get those scenarios underway, probably pre-ban units like Briarwitch Iceria as well, especially if you're using things like Holy Sacrifice or playing Maid Chloe, then we can pick Abyssal Yufine as one of our hyper carries in every single game, and players are reporting insane win rate success numbers, and that previous sheet I showed y'all, you know, definitely backs up those statistics on top of it. Beyond that, guys, I've tested it myself. I haven't gone as hardcore as, you know, picking her. I don't always get the ROL Auden, but I will say the games that I've played where I do have Auden on my side and some type of protection. Now with the Holy Sacrifice, the lifesteal set, guys, the game plan is to just make sure she sits there and eventually gets into the trauma, where previously I would say I almost never even experienced the trauma effect. Now that I'm playing my entire game plan around it, treating her as a hyper carry, I don't care how long it takes. As long as I'm sitting there and Abyssal Yufine is not dying, she will eventually win us the match with her trauma effect, and I think that's the key to success here. Pick some certain units, make sure we pre-ban problem units, treat her as a hyper carry, and draft carefully around our opponent, and Abyssal Yufine, it just seems so strong. Some of you guys might find that playstyle boring, because a lot of times Abyssal Yufine will just be sitting there. Sometimes she gets focused, counters, gets into trauma early. Other times she's going to be ignored, and you're really just playing the waiting game, trying to stall out your opponent for our win condition, you know, her popping off and all that. Those of you that are already playing units like Navy Captain Landy, ML Landy, for example, there's going to be scenarios where I think Navy Captain Landy will still be the superior hyper carry, has more potential to pop off as well. But if you guys do like Abyssal Yufine, I think the combat readiness is super strong. I think the trauma is that trauma effect, her being a hyper carry on her own, is something I severely underestimated. And now that I've experienced it myself, tried out the Holy Sacrifice, make sure I pick a little bit carefully in terms of the you know, synergistic draft. She's been amazing. Okay, so if you guys don't mind that play style, you want to pick up Abyssal Yufine. I think she is so much stronger than I predicted last week, and almost everybody that plays PvP seriously has been saying the same. Okay, a very strong, maybe top tier RTA unit. And on top of that too, guys, she is really strong in Arena as well. Probably going to be strong for Guild Wars too. But Arena defense, some of my friends and guildmates that have been trying out this secret tech, I think it's all out in the open now, have been reporting some insane success, you know, successful defense numbers. So those of you that care about Arena as well, even more incentive to pull for this unit. Lastly, guys, is she worth 10k mystics? I think if you're not a PvP player, then my advice last week still stands. You might find more success in a unit that does more than just being that kind of anti-cleave, anti-aggro, but now I'm going to say hyper carry role, where we don't have to pick her just there. But she is still just a PvP unit. And if you guys want something to more round out your draft, if you already have other hyper carries and you want something else that's more utility, like Mediator Quirk, just to name an example, then I think you could still go for something else. But those of you that do like PvP, that want to take it very seriously, really consider picking up Abyssal Yufine, especially this week with how good that banner lineup is. All right, so I think we'll wrap things up there, guys. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in, and good luck on your summons if you do pull for this unit. Peace out, everybody.